hills all day.
United States Congressman out of New York came to Montgomery at the behest of Edie Nixon, and Edie Nixon was running for the local Democratic committee, and he spoke to black people in that auditorium, in that gymnasium, and he reminded the people of Montgomery, the black population of Montgomery, that they could use their economic leverage to challenge racial discrimination in Montgomery. It's one of those events leading up to the bus boycott. Behind me, across the street, the women of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the women of the SCLC, erected that monument of Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks attended the Alabama State Laboratory School, which was located on this corner. Also, earlier I talked to you all about Joanne Robinson. Joanne Robinson was the Alabama State professor who headed up the Women's Political Council and brought students over to campus to run off flyers announcing the bus boycott. They ran off the flyers in the basement of that building, that's the administrative hall, to where the Alabama State University sign is. And several years ago, the president of Alabama State approached myself and the folks that work with me and asked us to make an assessment of all the buildings on campus and to determine if any of these buildings should be renamed. And we identified 4 buildings and one street name. We recommended changing the name of this street. But one place we recommended was Big Graves Hall. If you look down right in front of us, there's a bell tower at the top of that hill. That was Big Graves Hall. Big Graves was a Depression-era governor of Alabama, known as a progressive governor, but he also was the Grand Cyclops of the Montgomery Clarion of the Ku Klux Klan. So and I went to Alabama State, we always detested that we had a building on our campus named for this man. And so we recommended to the president that he change the name of that building. He took that to the Board of Trustees. They agreed with him, and they took the name Bibb Graves down. Then he asked us what name should go in its place. And we recommended several names, but the top of that list was Joanne Robinson, the woman we talked about who initiated or who ran off the flyers and initiated the Montgomery bus boycott. And so her name is affixed to that building. So now it's known as Joanne Robinson Hall. But I wanted to take you to this location. It's the interest of Alabama State for those several reasons. We're going to go back to where we came from, and I can talk to you a little bit about it now, but at that intersection where we just left, there were 2 houses. One house is the birthplace of Nat King Cole. It was moved several blocks. It used to be where the stadium is now, and they moved it to its present location. But they moved it to right next to the house of Ralph David Abernathy. Ralph Abernathy was a minister at First Baptist Church here in Montgomery. He also took over the Montgomery Improvement Association when King left Montgomery to go to Atlanta. He then took over the Southern Christian Leadership Conference when King was assassinated. He also spearheaded or advised the students at Alabama State who participated in the sit-in movement. But Ralph Abernathy's house was bombed in the aftermath of the Montgomery bus boycott. So those 2 houses are right next to each other, and you'll see those houses. We'll pass back by them. And there's 2 markers in front of them: the Ralph David Abernathy house and the Nat King Cole birth house. So we're gonna head on back, and then we're gonna stop at Oak Park, and we'll have another conversation. All right? All right. It's a determined online. midnight kitchen table, something like this. Midnight kitchen table sermon. Anyway, he delivers this sermon where he talks about his experiences in this house at the beginning of the Montgomery bus boycott. And he's having a conversation with God, and he's asking God to give him strength that he doesn't know whether he has the strength and the fortitude to lead the movement. And God is talking to him, telling him he's going to be by his side. The king is awoken late night by one of many threatening phone calls. He sits at the kitchen table, and when he has this experience. And then, of course, 3 days later, his house is actually bombed. But he has the fortitude to sort of live through and sustain himself through that movement or that episode. But this is an interesting neighborhood. This is, of course, the neighborhood where the Dexter Avenue King's Memorial Church opted to put its parcel. But at the intersection, for those of you who were watching the film and you saw the students marching, they said they were marching from Alabama State campus or from Jackson Street to the county courthouse or to the state capitol. If you notice, there was that building to our left across the street is the Bidwell Hotel, the 3-story building. They were marching at that intersection. Many of the activities where the police and the posse attacked the students here in Montgomery occurred in this intersection, in this space. That facility, that hotel was built by a Matthew Moore. He was an Alabama State graduate, a farmer. He came up with some innovative irrigation techniques. He became very successful. He sold his farm and he purchased that land and built a hotel in 1952. The hotel had a cafe on the ground floor, but on the top floor there was they called it the rooftop garden, and it was part of the Chitlin Circuit. The Chitlin Circuit was a number of venues throughout the South where black entertainers, when they would go down and play for white folks at major venues, they would go at late that night and play in black venues. This was one of those venues, but they were all throughout the South, the Chitlin Circuit. When we looked at the Freedom Riders, after they were beat at the Greyhound bus station, they dispersed throughout Montgomery, but then they reassembled at the house with the green awning on top of it. It's the Richard Harris house. Richard Harris was a Tuskegee Airman. He was a local businessman. He had a drugstore downtown that acted as a transportation hub for the Montgomery bus boycott, for the makeshift transportation network that black folks had constructed to replace buses. But that's where all of the luminaries and the leaders of the civil rights movement, along with the Freedom Riders, gathered to plot their way forward. And they decided again to continue the Freedom Rise and not let the violence that occurred in Anniston and in Birmingham and here in Montgomery distract them. In the house, there was a house several doors down. A couple of months ago, they demolished the house. The house was the home of John W. Jones, who was a state senator during the Reconstruction period. He was a black state senator. So one of the few black state senators during the Reconstruction period. So this neighborhood was the elite black neighborhood during the latter part of the 19th century and throughout the 20th century. One of the things, the retirement systems of Alabama built this structure across the street from us. There's a parking lot, a parking deck, and then there's a building next to it. There was some concern in this neighborhood that it would eat at the historic nature of the neighborhood. And what they agreed to do was to put several reliefs that tell the story of this neighborhood on that wall over there. So on that wall, there's several spaces, 4 spaces, and they're gonna have bronze reliefs that tell the story of this neighborhood. Some of the stuff I've told you, and some of the other things that happened in this neighborhood, to sort of commemorate the importance of this community. But anyway, this is the Central Hill community. If you look down past the light on the right-hand side, there's a church, and in that film, you would have seen people singing in the church. That's the church that they were at. So this neighborhood was central to the themselves on Dexter Avenue. We'll go by there, the Dexter Avenue King Memorial Church, King's Old Church. There was no pastor at the time in 1965, so the deacons ran that church. They didn't want the students to stay in the church. There were hundreds of students in the church. And so the deacons turned off the water, turned off the lights, turned off the electricity to force the students out. The deacons were going to have the police come in and forcibly remove the students. John Lewis, who was the chairperson of SNCC, negotiated with the pastor of that church to allow the students to relocate to that church. So the reason why they were in that church was because they were going to be raided at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, but John Lewis arranged for them to move to Jackson Street Baptist Church, and that became the headquarters of students in Montgomery. All right, we're going to Wall. Where are we heading now? We're going that way. Okay, we're heading back towards our the father of American gynecology. And so there are several other locations. Well, we talked about, I wanted to bring up one other thing to your attention while we stop here. I talked about the RSA. They're building that building at the corner of Jackson and High in Centennial Hill. The RSA wanted to build a skyscraper, a building where the state Supreme Court building stands. There was an upheaval about demolishing the state Supreme Court building. So what the retirement systems of Alabama did was to build their building around the entire state Supreme Court. So if you look at that building behind you, you see there's another building inside of it. That's the old state Supreme Court building. And then they built their structure around it. Wow. But this would have been determined, this is where the Selma to Montgomery March terminated, right in front of the state capitol, right in front of, or on the ground, in front of the state capitol. There's also a bicentennial park. You see some monuments around this park on this side of the street, across from the state capitol. Those monuments highlight the different episodes or different aspects of Alabama's history over 200 years. Okay, I think this is that our last stop, Walter? Okay, it's our last stop.